at a very young age of 20. He went on to develop several businesses, and he started mentoring youth from as young as 27, started mentoring children and showing them the way forward. To his credit, he has six-figure earners that have become adults because of his mentorship. So I'm very grateful and thankful that I have the privilege to call him one of my mentors today. I'm so thankful that our pathways have intersected and they are going to continue in alignment going forward, Mr. Sloan. So without further ado, let's go ahead and put some sevens in the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, eights in the chat. The one who is the key architect behind the financial technology arm of our community that's right now growing and expanding around the world. Go ahead and light up the chat, ladies and gentlemen, with some hearts, some fire, some dynamite sticks as we welcome to this virtual floor none other than Mr. Adrian Dynamite Sloan. Are you there, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I can hear me all right, Dr. B. Good morning.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. An excellent morning to you, sir. You're looking bright and shine over there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good to see you, my brother, man. Y'all put some fire in the chat for Dr. Benjamin himself. The doctor is in the house, man. We appreciate you, Dr. B, for all that you do continuously on a regular basis. Dr. B, I was on your call last night. And man, I was eating dinner, and man, I was just fired up, man. I was fired up, man. You just did a great job with the call, and you just caught fire, man. You just got on a roll, man. Put a one on the chat if you was on Dr. Benjamin's opportunity call last night. I mean, let me put me a couple of ones in there. Wait a second, let me put me a couple of ones in there. Because man, it sparked something in me just to hit a vision, you know what I mean? The zeal, the passion, the buy-in to the vision. Because guys, if you've been around this company for the last 2 years, right, you know, you've seen this company go through highs and lows and valleys and overcome, you know what I'm saying? And so just the passion of belief is everything. In the arts of life, in business, and in partnership, you have to believe, right? And so Dr. Benjamin's belief for me, is at an all-time high because he have seen this company prevail and to grow. And I am more excited now than ever because my belief level is high as well. I have a overstanding of exactly where we are and where we going and what it's going to take to do it, man. So guys, put some fire in the chat. And I just got to highlight my brother right now because he's just doing an amazing job. And I'm just grateful to be in business with you, Dr. Benjamin. You're a great man, you're a great father. And every time I hear what you do, you know, the growth of your family trading together right now, I mean, it just does something to my heart because that's what we started this community for. And this platform was for families to grow. And that skill set of trading to be something that the families can do because it's not what's in your pocket, you know, what's in your mind. So what's in your mind creates what goes to your pocket. And so that skill set is doing just that and seeing your family benefit from that. It's just a blessing to be able to see. So again, y'all put some hearts in the chat for my brother, Dr. B. It's a doctor in the house, man. We appreciate you, Dr. Benjamin, for everything you do. Guys, I'm excited, man. As I was saying, I've been up since about 3 o'clock this morning. Went to bed early after the trading session with Mr. Akil Bay. Got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, man, was excited and just started working. So I probably done did a 4 days work before I had my first cup of coffee. Had a chance to hang out with Miss Shannon Irie today, man. We was on the chart, man. Congratulations, man. That sister's a great educator, just a great student of the game. And guys, this whole deal is about learning, right? So we understand the 7 tiers you know, of success in our deal. The first deal is understanding the academy, right? And understanding what it takes to be a great student. You have to learn this game at a high level to be able to appreciate what happens, right? So, you know, we're going to start this series off today, and I got so much information today, guys. I'm really probably going to have to split this, to be honest. I'm probably going to do a little bit today. I may just come back and do the rest next Tuesday, right? You know what I mean? So, but I just got so much on here for you, man. But that first step of understanding, if you to appreciate the fintech side, guys, you got to appreciate the trading side, right? Because the trading side is where you make the money. And then the fintech teaches you what to do with the money. Make sense in the chat if that makes sense. So you got to understand phase one. Step one is learn how to make money in the market. Step two is know what to do with the money in the market. You know what I'm saying? So it's 1, then 2, right? Don't skip 1. Let's do 1 and then let's do 2 because that's what it's all about. And so what I'm going to give you today is the first part of our how to understand personal credit, right? So I'm gonna give you a deeper dive of knowledge of how it works. Got some videos in here I'm actually going to show you guys, and I'm really going to take my time with this. And that's why I say it may have to be a part 1 and part 2, because I'm the type of person, I love history, I love studying, I love researching, man. I promise you, I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff, because I like to understand where this stuff come from. History teaches us a lot. If you understand exactly how things were created, if you understand the original, state of how things develop, it makes you understand how things work now. And so when I really started looking at the aspect of personal credit, I went all the way back and started researching, where did it come from, right? It was only for businesses. It wasn't for consumers. I mean, I went all the way back to the 1800s, right, to really figure out the definition of FICO score and really who created this system and where did it come from, to get to the point where we understand all the softwares of financial technology that we have right now to be in a position to be able to leverage this stuff. Excuse me. You have to understand where it originated, right, to be able to understand and appreciate how to use it correctly. Put make sense in the chat if that makes sense to you. And so in our training today, we're going to go all the way back. We're going to look at credit breakdown. We're going to look at history of how it was broken down, right? I'm just going to give you an overview of my notes real quick, right? We're going to talk about the credit monitoring services. We're going to talk about the different levels of FICO 9, 8, and 10, 2 through 5, right? We're going to dive into that. We're going to talk a little bit about credit simulators and how they work. We're going to talk about the importance of credit restoration and credit education, guys. We're going to go deep into that to understand why you upload these letters, right, for the Fair Credit Reporting Act, to understand how that works. So when we work with our clients to understand why we're doing what we're doing, right, you have to know that to really understand how this all makes sense and it helps the client's life, right? And we're going to talk about certain sites, like skip tracing sites and things of like nature, that your information can actually be accurate on too. Again, all helpful information. So I'm giving you the history and the practical application of how all this stuff comes together, man. So put a 7 in the chat, guys, if you guys are ready to go and if you are ready to hear some of this information. So I'm going to actually split my screen. Give me 1 second. So it may look like I'm looking off, but just bear with me, right? Let me share my screen. I may look a little cross-eyed for a second. Just bear with me. Give me a minute. Let me pull this up. So let's go through the credit history for just a moment. And I want to actually show you guys exactly how this credit stuff is broken down. Okay. All right. Give me 1 second. Let me see if we can get this first screen. That's not the one I want yet. Hold on. All right. History. Okay. Okay. All right, here we go. All right, let me share my screen with you guys real quick. Let's get to it, man. I'm excited about this, man. I love teaching. Absolutely love it. All right, so let me share my screen with you guys. Because when we walk away from this deal, guys, you're going to know how this works. You're not going to be guessing. You're going to know how this works, and then how all these things that extremists put together from the simulators and all this kind of stuff, why this stuff is important. All right, can you guys see my screen, right? Give me a 1 in the chat if you guys can see my screen. All right, it said the history of the FICO score. Can you guys see that? All right, awesome. All right, so let's talk about this deal, guys. So we got to understand, right? How does credit work? What's the history of this? So if you go back, right, and you can put this link down, right, myfico.com, credit education, right? So I'm going to copy this link. Matter of fact, I'm getting fancy with it, Dr. Benjamin, Ms. Bridget. I'm starting to learn how to copy links and share. Woo! Y'all better watch out. Y'all better watch out. I'm getting good at this stuff. Y'all know when we first started, man, I couldn't share a screen, but we own it now. So the history, right, of FICO score. Listen to this, guys. It goes all the way back to the 1800s, right? So when you look at this deal, you'll learn that credit itself, right, was used particularly just for companies. It was not even used for the regular consumer. You see right here in the 1800s, most credit was conducted by businesses, not consumers, right? As business transaction increased, commercial lenders need the way to standardize and elevate in the credit evaluation, right? You'll go through here and it tells you right here in the middle, right? In the end of this data was considered to be too subjective, and many opinions noted racial, class, and gender biases subscribers to the mercantile agency, right? Now look at this name, rename RG Dunn & Co. Now take note of that name, right? That's going to make sense to you in just a second. And his rival, the Bradstreet Company. Did you ever heard of something called Dun & Bradstreet? Right, we even said in our presentation, you need to know where it came from. It was two different companies that came together because the information that they had was combative and subjective. So they actually joined forces, and it was able to be in a position to create the database that we have today called Dun & Bradstreet, right? Demanded by simplified evaluation method. It was during this time that the two important things happened. The two companies merged into Dun & Bradstreet, and this system for credit evaluation was created. So if a person ever says, now, what is Dun & Bradstreet? We say, okay, it helps you with your credit score. But in your mind, you need to know this is something that was always used for businesses. So doesn't that make sense to you now that the #1 credit monitoring services for businesses started because credit was used for businesses only, and Dun & Bradstreet was two different companies that came together to create it, right? Make sense in the chat if you got that now, right? Now you know where it came from, but you're going to learn something that it just blew my mind about Equifax in just a moment, right? Even before the other three bureaus came to pass with Experian and TransUnion, Equifax was the first bureau, right, out of the three. But the deal of it is Equifax had a problem. I'm about to show you what's going on. So it said, as this goes through the 1900s, I won't read you all of that, right? I want to take you right here. In 1970, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, write that down. Because a lot of things when we sending off letters for a client to be in a position to be able to dispute their credit report is going through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, right? Was passed requiring credit reporting bureaus like RCC, the same one that created Dun & Bradstreet, to open their files to the public. Now, let's pause for a minute. So now, when the regulators got involved and it made the bureaus having to open up their files because it was just used for businesses. But when you start using it for businesses and consumers, now we had to look at the accuracy to make sure it was accurate. So when we're actually getting a client's credit report disputed, it's disputing for the inaccuracies because there could be some things on their public record that is not correct, that could be hindering a person's progression of their FICO score, which we'll get into FICO score in just a moment. So I want you to understand that this happened because of this law in 1970. So when people are sending in letters to dispute on the credit, they're disputing based upon the Fair Credit Reporting Act. This is what the disputes are all for. So when we talk about in our smart credit product and we start, looking at the credit monitoring and we start looking at the simulators, all the disputes, and that's why we say credit education, right? Not just credit repair or credit restoration, because it's all based upon disputing inaccuracy that's on the public file. That's a law. So the disputes are based on the law of the Fair Credit Reporting Act. All right, makes sense? All right, so they had to open up their files to the public and expunge data. Hello, expunge means take off, dispute, delete, right? On the credit file, data on race, sexuality, and disability, and delete negative information after a specified period of time, although the Fair Credit Reporting Act had a slight negative effect on RCC's reputation. The company remained intact, and in 1975 changed its name to Equifax. Ain't that something? So Equifax, isn't it funny that most of the breaches in the system that you see be with Equifax, right? Equifax was the first company that started in this credit process with the consumer side, and Equifax had the most data, and a lot of it was inaccurate. So they were the first one that was made to open up their files. And in today's society, usually when there's a breach of data, it's with Equifax. And then the information go through TransUnion and Experian. But I thought that was a real good fun fact to understand that this process started with them. And they're actually in Atlanta. For everybody that's in Atlanta, Equifax is real phone people, right? It's down in Atlanta, right? All right. So over time, Experian and TransUnion was created, and these companies are now considered the top 3 credit reporting agencies. Guys, good stuff to know, right? Let's dig in a little deeper, right? Even with such immense demand for the systems and the agency, they continue to have difficulty, right, interpreting and comparing their reports. Now listen to where this comes from. Now we about to get into where the FICO came from, right? right, to help find an industry standard, right, credit report that include consistent credit summary algorithm. They began working with a well-known tech company founded in 1956 called, now write this down, Fair, Isaac and Company, known today as FICO. So when people say FICO score, right, they don't really understand that came from a technology company who created an algorithm. That's good information for you to know, right? It's all about technology, and that's why it's easily disputed. And this is why a person does a credit application. It's all technology is being computed. If you're in the mall, if you're in Macy's, if you're, at any store that you're filling out for a credit card, the technology of this particular algorithm is what they base off of. This is why we got to dispute with Equifax and everything else, is because if something's on that file that's not right, we need to fix it so that algorithm runs correctly. The result was the FICO score was developed and utilized. The algorithm is very similar to the one that we use today. Guys, this is what I want you to understand. Where did this stuff come from? Number one, we're blessed to be consumers who actually in business as well, that we have an opportunity to be able to use this system to leverage it. But I want you guys to understand the history of where it comes from, right? So let me share this screen with you, and let's go a little further. And let's understand how the FICO score is actually generated. So FICO score itself is broken down between a couple of different areas, and we're going to dig deeper inside of this space. But the FICO score, and I'm going to tell you actually next, we're going to watch a little video for a moment, is actually going to explain probably 2 sections down how the credit monitoring service that we have in Extreme with the smart credit actually utilizes this information. But I want you to understand how the FICO score is designed. FICO score is a calculator using many different pieces of credit data for your credit report. The data is grouped in 5 categories. So everyone's credit report, mine, yours, and everybody on the Zoom, and every client that you're working on, right? When we're working on building a personal credit up, this is how it's broken down. 35% is payment history. So sometimes when you're disputing a client's file, you might not want to delete certain lines because it has history attached to it. And 35% of their algorithm for their credit is based on their history. 30% is how much they owe. The rule of thumb of it is you want to make sure your credit is always below 30% of utilization on personal credit. Business credit does not matter. Personal credit is 30%. And this is why if your credit card is 10,000 and you spend 5,000, your credit score shoots down drastically on the next reporting period. Guys, put a 1 in the chat if that ever happened to you before. Let me put me a couple of ones. It's happened to me before. You know what I'm saying? When you spend and you forget to pay it by the statement date. Now I'm gonna give you a fun fact. You got 2 different dates on your credit report, right? One is the statement date, right? That's the date that the statement comes out, right? The statement that's going to be generated, and then you got the reporting date. So when you look at, okay, my statement, the due date, excuse me, my statement date, that my statement is being populated is on the 5th, which means you want that credit has to be paid down by the 4th. Your statement date is the last date that they're going to look at that credit utilization before they report it to the credit bureau. So any client that you're working with, even for yourself, you need to call every credit card company you have and ask them, what is my statement date? Because your statement date is what they're going to report from. Now, your due date on your bill could be the 15th, but the statement date is on the 5th. So the client needs to pay by the 4th to keep that 30% utilization down, right? The bill is not due until the 15th, and then they got 30 days from the 15th to pay it so they don't get a 30-day late. Make sense in the chat if that makes sense to you. See, guys, I want you to understand how this works, because this is how we're going to really impact our clients, to make sure our clients really understand the knowledge of how this works. So when you're sitting down with a client, it's, well, my credit is good to go, right? If they score a 730 or 780 even, a 760, I could look at that client report and be able to tell exactly what they need to be able to improve, because 850 is the max. So if they at 740, 750, 760, I assure you one of these 2 key factors is probably where they're off at. Either it's going to be their credit history, or the amount that's owed is a little bit over, at 30% and below, but it might be 20, 25. They get to 800 and above, it has to be below 10%. So this is good information alone. Statement date for your client, due date, right? And all this is going to be inside of the simulator. When you start looking at how do these apps work for the clients when they get the product, this is what the client is actually utilizing. But I need you guys as members to understand, how does this work? So you will understand how these apps, that's when a person signs up for the personal credit and they pay that $239 and they get that credit monitoring services. What does that mean? Like, what is the point of that? it enhances this key algorithm in the system that we learned with FICO score was generated based on technology. That has to be right. So you need to have the knowledge of 2 dates for their credit reporting. Statement date and due date are 2 different things, right? Always pay the bill before the what? Somebody put it in the chat. The client bill needs to be paid before what date to keep their credit algorithm up, to keep their score up at the maximized level. Somebody put it in the chat and tell me which date is it? Is it the statement date or the due date? Which date is the date that impacts the client's credit the most? The statement date. And it needs to be paid at least how many days before? So if the client bill is due on the 5th, to make sure the FICO score technology algorithm works the best, that the bill needs to be paid at least how many days before? At least 1 day before. Exactly, Dr. Benjamin. At least 1 day. Because if it's on the 5th, it needs to be paid out before the close of business on the 4th. So they report on the 5th at midnight, it's already taken care of, right? 15% is credit history, right? We got that. 10% is credit mix, 35% is payment history, right? So we got to understand this, it's a mix that goes on in here. So let's keep going, right? This is going to vary based upon person. I went through this a little bit, but I want to show you guys this video. Dr. Benjamin, guys, let me know if you can hear this. I think you got to do something fancy to hear audio, but let me know. Hold on.
Consider this. If you were lending your...
Can you guys hear it? When I was playing?
Yes.
Okay, you can hear it. All right. Oh, man, look at that, Molly. Woo! Ooh, we on our way. Oh.
own money to a friend, you'd want to make sure you'll get paid back. You'd probably wonder, have they paid their past debts on time? How much debt do they already have? And who else are they approaching for the loan? FICO scores help lenders answer these same questions every day, but through a mathematical formula that makes the lending decisions faster, safer, and more fair. So it's really important you understand how your credit activities and behaviors are considered when calculating FICO scores. FICO scores focus on 5 key predictive categories: your payment history, how much you owe, how long you've had credit, if you've recently sought new credit, and the types of credit you've used. Clearly, your payment history and level of debt substantially drive your FICO scores. Have you missed payments? If so, how often, how recently, and how late were they? Have you had debts turned over to a collection agency? Do you have foreclosures, or have you filed for bankruptcy? The more recent, frequent, and severe the reported negative items are, the bigger the impact on your scores. Next, there's the debt you're already carrying. Are your credit cards nearly maxed out? How many accounts with balances do you have? How much of your available credit is being used? If you're overextended, you're more likely to miss future payments. Then there's how long you've had established credit, from your oldest to your newest account, and an average age of all your accounts. FICO scores also consider how often you've actively applied for credit in the past year. Rate shopping is accommodated for, and promotional, insurance, and employment inquiries don't count against you. Whenever you apply for credit, there's a good chance your lender is using FICO scores to help make that approval decision. So it's important that you understand your FICO scores, because it could help you know whether you qualify for low rates on your next loan. Know your FICO scores. Understand what goes into your scores.
All right, guys. All right, so you guys got that, right? All right. Put a 7 in the chat, guys, if you guys got a good understanding of what FICO score means at this point. If you got a good understanding of what FICO score actually means, where it came from, where did Dun & Bradstreet come from? It came from 2 companies in the 1800s who merged because credit was only used for businesses. This is why it's one of the top reporting agencies for business credit that's in our business credit suite, Dun & Bradstreet number. What is Dun & Bradstreet for? It's a data processor. It's a data mining company pretty much that has all these files of the business reporting that goes directly to them, and they give what they call a paydex score. So FICO score is for the person, right? A paydex score comes from the business side. And that paydex score for Dun & Bradstreet is what the businesses or lenders are going to look at to be able to dictate what the person credit worthiness of it is. So now that you understand Dun & Bradstreet, you have a great idea of where FICO came from, And you also understand when you look at the different variations of how credit is put together. I want to talk to you guys about the different type of FICO scores. You follow me? Based upon, Shannon just went in that direction too, based on FICO 8, 9, and 2 through 5, because it is different types of scores that a person actually be able to utilize, right? So let me pull this up. Now, when you look at FICO 9 is one that's typically used by the most lenders overbroad. But guys, that's not the only score. Again, I'm going to share this version with you. So when you're looking at a client, even when they're looking at monitoring service and they say, well, on this, you can go buy a car, and they could say, well, your score is 650. And you could say, well, no, my score is 725. And you could be debating with them, but they might be looking at FICO 8, they might be looking at FICO 7, right? FICO 9 is overall consumer things, but as you can see here, it's a couple different ones. So you guys need to know that, right? So widely used, right? You may have FICO 8 or 9 for here, different versions for credit card decisions. They may use 8 or 9, right? You can look at here for cars, right? Auto lending, 8, 9, 2. Mortgage lenders going to use 2, 5, and 4, right? So when you look at this, guys, this is a little deeper dive into understanding credit as a broad, especially from a business perspective when you're working with clients, because you don't ever want to get into a position where a client say, well, my score is on the monitoring service, and this is what you said you helped build my credit to, but I went to go get a car, and they said my score is lower. Your response is, well, which FICO score did they use? Most clients are going to say, well, I'm not sure. This is just what I use. You're on your monitoring service is FICO 9. If they pull 8 or 2 or anything else, it's going to be a different score. What's the difference of it is different amounts of data that's added to it that they're mining from to be able to report that from auto, which is installment loans. Revolving lines, what 9 is going to give you a mix between installment and revolving all together. But when you look at mortgages and auto loans, they're looking at more of installments because those are installment-based loans. So the different FICO scores are going to dictate because of what type of purchase is the client trying to make. So each lender may pull from a different FICO database just to get exactly the information that they want. When you look at it, it's almost looking like those of us who got children, right, or was in school ourselves, and you look at a cumulative GPA, right? When you look at the cumulative GPA, that's overall. Then you look at the weighted GPA, which is the core classes. You know what I'm saying? So even when I go look at my kids with their report cards or their GPAs, I'll always look at it and I'll ask them and say, listen, what's their cumulative and what's their weight? Because I understand the difference. Because PE, they can have 100 in PE and they got their GPA up. But if I look at math, English, and science, right, and they got a 4.0 because of PE, but they really got a 3.2 based on their core classes. It's the same thing, if that makes sense. Makes sense in the chat if that makes sense to you. Guys, you got to understand the differences. So when you're working with our clients, it just puts you in a better position of power. Because the more little nuances, things like this, that you understand, the more comfortable your client is going to be in doing business with you, because a lot of our business that we dealing with finance and money is credibility. People like to do business with people that they know and they can trust. And they love working with somebody with money who they actually understand knows money. Money is a language, just like French, Spanish, English, all these are languages. Money is a language too. So when people understand that you can speak the language of money fluently, they're more prone to do money things with you, right? Does that make sense? And so I really want you to make sure you guys understand how this stuff is breaking down so you're in a position of power when you're looking at actually working with your clients, okay? All right, so the next thing I'm gonna do real quick for you guys, is this helpful? Somebody let me know if this is helpful. You guys getting something from this? This is just dynamite history lesson real quick. I could have took this a lot of different ways, but I woke up this morning feeling really, really good. And I want to be able to give you guys some data, some research of understanding where does this stuff come from? Because I don't need you guys just talking about this stuff randomly and loosely and just saying words that you don't have the definition to. One of the things that helped me with my security license when I got my security license over a decade ago is I used to study flashcards, and I would just travel and I would just study flashcards, and I got a good understanding of what words mean. Because words in a sentence just sounds like a sentence put together until you break down the word. And when I started really understanding the words like red herring, and I got to understand perspectives and things of this nature, what that really means, when I saw it in a sentence, I knew what it was because of the one word that was used. Even if I was confused about the statement they was trying to make, defining the word always pulled my mind into understand what are we speaking about, if that makes sense. And so when I look at understanding financial technology products, and I look at how can I really help you guys as students learn not only how to market our product, but how to be intelligent enough about it that you're never intimidated about anybody talking to it. Because if you're comfortable enough to understand it, you'll be comfortable enough to market it. Does that make sense? I want you to know where Dun & Bradstreet came from. So when you're doing a presentation, you say you get a Dun & Bradstreet score, you understand what Dun & Bradstreet is. I want you to know where FICO came from, right? I want you to understand why Equifax has so many breaches, right? Because they've always been a bureau really that was really discriminatory. They would discriminate on people since they've been in business. And so they have a lot of issues with their data. And so you need to understand what the Fair Credit Reporting Act is, because that is your friend. The Fair Credit Reporting Act is what letters are disputed to. That's actually is a location that's sent to that disputes inaccuracies. And we're talking about inaccuracies. Let me just hit on that. We're talking about checking for understanding, right? Late payment errors, right? You can have something reported on a credit report and is late on the reporting, but it wasn't in actuality. How many of you guys mortgage ever been sold before? Have you guys ever had a mortgage sold? My mortgage has been sold 2 times. You know what I'm saying? And so what happens is when companies buy mortgages and they switch from one lender to another lender, if that reporting is not accurate, it can mess up your credit report. It can really mess it up. When I bought my house, it was with Bank of America, right? And then it switched to another company. Then it was bought by PennyMac. So it done changed 3 hands, right? You know, since I've had this house for 15 years, and it done switched hands 3 times, where it could be some inaccuracy in the transmittal of that information. Don't take for granted that just because these companies are big companies, they don't make mistakes. These companies are ran by people. Hello. They ain't ran by robots. They can have technology and systems all day long, but at the end of the day, these companies are ran by people. And so when you look at actually getting things disputed and making sure things are accurate, again, we learned that the FICO is a technology algorithm that's put together in the transmitter of that data. If that data is not transmitted correctly, your file is going to have an error, regardless if you paid it on time or not. And so when we're looking at doing disputes on a client's file, it's to check the accuracy of the data. It could be something as simple as the addresses on the file. You can have a lender that's reporting an address to the file that is not your address. It could be somebody with a similar name, but it's spelled 1 letter differently. This is an inaccuracy, right? That means it's not correct. If a lender reports something to the credit bureau and your name is spelled wrong, it can be deleted because that's not how you spell your name. It could be something as small as they wrote your name in small caps versus all large caps. That is not your name. It is deleted, right? Inaccuracies is what's going on in the algorithm of FICO, right? And to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, when we sign our clients up for stuff to be disputed, it is no gimmick with that. This is true data mining corrections that have to be done because these companies are ran by people, not robots. So when we find out that inaccuracy, it has to be fixed. Misspelled names, balance reported incorrectly. If a company reports a balance that is incorrect, it has to be removed. Because why? It's inaccurate. I don't care if it's $100 off. It's wrong. That $100 could be messing up my DTI. What is my DTI? My debt to income ratio that helps my FICO score be in a position because I want my debt to be low, right? With my income being high, and I'm going to make a purchase for a home, and you reported my information inaccurately, it messes up my interest rate. How does that affect me as a consumer? My interest rate is affected, so I'm going to have to spend a large amount of money on a down payment, and I have to spend more money on my monthly payment because of your inaccuracy. So when we sending over letters to dispute on a client's file based on this technological algorithm, if we find inaccuracy, it has to be removed. Put make sense in the chat if that makes sense to you guys. This is what it is for. So when we're looking at why is it important to know this information, because these people are not make-believe fairy dust people that we just need to be afraid of, and we can't dispute stuff, and we just got to take whatever they say for our credit report. If I pull up my credit report and it looks like something good or not good, but I find some errors, I'm stuck with it. No, you're not. You're protected by the Fair Credit Reporting Act to be able to dispute inaccuracies, to be able to find out exactly what's going on with your report and put you in a position of power. Somebody put position of power in the chat. You deserve to be in a position of power. This program is built to leverage so that you can be put in a position of power for you and your family. So again, what are we checking for in a Fair Credit Reporting Act? When we send over for credit education and credit restoration, we're checking for errors, late payment errors, incorrect address errors, misspelled names, balances reported incorrectly. And why can we do this? Because this system was designed to check Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, who are all data companies, to make sure that the data that backs the consumer is correct. And if it's not correct, it's called a dispute. Does that make sense? Is this helping anybody out there? I told you guys I woke up feeling good this morning. Dr. Thomas, how you doing out there, sir? I hope we're giving them some good information there, Dr. Thomas. Guys, I just want to make sure you understand how this stuff really works in real life, right? There's no way to be intimidated by these people. You just got to understand the game. And then once we understand the game, we play the game, right? So let me give you guys another fun lesson, right? Let's keep digging, right? Let me see if I want to give you anything else on this one. Hold on. Then I went through all of this. Okay. All right, here it is right here. See, new cars, applying for credit cards, FICO 8s, purchase and finance a home, FICO 8s. It's a difference, guys. FICO 8s and FICO 9s are totally different. So you want to make sure you understand the difference. All right, let me go over here because I want to show you guys something else. Let's keep digging. Let's keep rolling. All right, let's talk about this. A lot of people want to talk about credit report and credit scores. Okay, it's a difference, guys. It's a difference between your credit report and your credit score, right? And you got to understand your credit report, write this down. A client credit report is more valuable than a credit score. Now, this might be a shocker to some of y'all, but the client credit report actually gives more history to a lender. So you can have a person, let's say my son, 18 years old. I could build this credit report right now, and he can have an 810 FICO score, right? A lender looks at it on paper. Oh my God, this guy got an 810 FICO score, right? But they look at his credit report. The report is like a report card. It's like a student having an A in biology, right? In one class. I'm like, oh man, this guy is an amazing student. No, it's just a kid who likes biology, right? I look at their whole report card and they got D's and F's and everything else. Is this person really a good student? Not really, right? So credit score is just that look at that first initial part of the file. So if you send in a client over for funding, why is this relative? Because we have so many people who send over client files for funding, right? And when I look at some of the declines on their funding, they say, oh, my client had a such and such credit score. But your client credit report was not up to par, right? Because they didn't have those things we talked about. What did we talk about? We talked about history, right? You know, how long have they had it? What's the client credit mix? See, the credit report gives the bureau or the lender, gives the lender more history about how this client has been overall. So a person can have an 810 credit score and think they're going to get approved for a loan and get declined. And another person can have a 750 and get approved for maximum funding. Why is that? Because the credit report is more important than the credit score. Does that make sense? So when you look at this deal, overall, a credit report is a record of your history, managing and repaying debt. Just that one sentence right there. It is your history. I don't want to know how you did in one class. I want to know how you did overall in school when your whole GPA. The whole report is better than one class, like it's better than you just having one score. So don't get offended if clients get declined because of score. Lenders don't just look at score solely. They look at credit reports. Does that make sense? It works as a common report card. Lenders, they just put it in there, right? And other companies view when deciding to do business with you. They decide to do business with you based on your history. not just your score. Included in the credit report is historical record of how and when you pay your bills. Okay, are you paying your bills ahead of time? Are you paying the debts down fast, right? Are you paying them down slow? Are you missing a couple of payments every couple of months, right? What does that look like, right? How much debt do you have and how long have you managed your credit accounts? So guys, I really wanted to make sure that I took a moment and really hit on that. And why is that relative to what we do? Because when you got clients and you working with them for their file, especially for lending, you gotta look at their credit report. The lender's looking at their report, not just their score. I've had clients personally who got the client. I know they had a 750, a 770. I'm like, oh my God, the client good to go. I just got them a couple credit cards, right? So I know they're good there, but they applied for a $50,000 loan and they got denied. I mean, they just got two $25,000 credit cards for $50,000, but we applied for a loan and they got denied. And they pull it up and they look at, so well, they had a couple of charge-offs before, right? Or they had a couple collections and, that wasn't, disputed or paid off or handled. So they're looking at those installments. Remember, credit cards are always the easiest things to get for a client. When you're looking at getting your client installment loans, right? Just a closed-end loan or open-end loan, like a line of credit, it is going to be a lot more difficult based on how did your client pay on installments. So write this down. If you want your client to get approved for a loan, a open or closed-end loan, you need to make sure your client that you're submitting for funding has actually paid a open or closed-end loan installment previously. I'm trying to save you guys some time of asking your client more questions. Does that make sense? Okay, you got a 770. Okay, great. Well, you want to apply for a $50,000 loan. Okay, no problem. Well, within that, have you paid off any installment loans on your credit report priorly? Whether it be a mortgage or car loan, have you ever got a loan from any other institution for $10,000 or $20,000 before? Have you ever experienced getting a loan and paying it off? And they say, no, I've never done that before. Okay, then in your mind that client may not get approved for that type of loan because they've never done it before. Write this down. Lenders never want to be the first person to give you some money. They don't want to be the first person. Lenders don't want to be the first person to give you some money. They rather see how you spent money, or how somebody else gave you money, and how you handled the money with them before they give you theirs and you mess it up. That's just how it works. You follow me? And that's why a lot of times when you're younger, you get some of these credit cards and you're in a position where, you get you apply for some of these loans and you got these high interest rates. And that's like not good when you're starting off, but them starter loans put you in a position of what? Experience, history. So when people actually pull the credit report and they see that these clients has already paid off these type of loans before, what does that do? Yeah, you had a $5,000 loan. It was at 15 or 20% when you was younger or when your credit was getting rebuilt. But now when I look at your, 5-10 years later, and I look at that credit report card and they showed that client has already paid it off as a lender, I'm gonna say, well, they did good. The rate was high, it was 20% on 5,000, but they paid it off with no late payments. Okay, now they're applying for 15,000 with us. Okay, I'm okay with that. They paid off 5. We good with 15. I want to make sure, guys, I break that part of it down for you because that's a major part of lending when you're looking at using the products to be able to help your client before the client pay that $49 for that loan application and you just submit the application into the lender and then your client is selling you on, okay, I got a great credit score, right? And they looking for X amount of dollars, whether it be personal or business. Because remember, your client's file is used as a personal guarantor, which means their file has to sign off on for the business. You guys, that's a part of my strategy I teach all the time. Get the personal credit score together, use it as a personal guarantor to sign for the business, and then put the liability on the business. In order for the business to be able to get approved for the funding that the business is looking for, guys, it has to still be the person has history before on paying an installment loan, especially with a 2-year term loan or anything like that, for the business to get approved. Guys, put make sense in the chat if that makes sense to you. Guys, I like to slow this stuff down to make sure you got it. Because we got some of the best business people that I've been around in Extreme in a long time. But I want to make sure, guys, we are using these products effectively and efficiently because I want you guys to make as much commission as possible. I want you to get as much commission from this deal as absolutely possible. But as your coach, it's Coach Sloan today. Like, this is Coach Sloan. It's Coach Dynamite in the lab with you in the locker room. You know, we're gonna put the marks under our eyes, right? We're gonna put a little dirt on there. We're gonna LeBron it, put the powder up in the air, right? This just Coach Sloan in the locker room with you today. In order for you to maximize how much money you're gonna get paid for these products, you gotta understand a little bit more information than $49 application, submit it. You know what I'm saying? You gotta understand a little bit more than that, right? I need you to ask your client more qualifying questions, right? Somebody put that in the chat. More qualifying questions. So when you asking your client more qualifying questions before you submit the application, that's going to put the weight on the client. Have any of you guys been in a situation where you submitted an application because the client said they want to get funded and you just bought what the client said? Oh yeah, man, I got a great business. Did $500,000 last year, you know, did $1 million, did 250,000. I got a 780 credit score, and I want $50,000 worth of funding. I want $100,000 worth of funding. And you're like, okay, no problem. Well, you thinking, okay, this guy good to go, right? $49 application. They fill it out. They do the paperwork, send it in. Okay, don't hear nothing back from the lender. We call, we follow up, we check on it, we send it back again. Oh, the client didn't fill out the application correct. Okay, cool. Now we fill it out again, send it in. Send it in, or pull up the report. Decline. You're like, what? Decline? The guy said he had $500,000 worth of, you know, business revenue. Person did, you know, had all this great credit, and you look at the files and the credit report wasn't worthy to the lender. You just wasted 30 days of your time waiting on this, you know, this process to submit and resubmit, or 2 weeks of your time, or 7 days of your time, or 30 minutes of your time, going through the process, and you could have broke credibility with your client because your client feel like you wasted their time. And in business, that's the worst feeling to give a client, like they wasted some time, right? So my thing to you, Coach Sloan, again, we in the locker room. My goal to you is to help you ask more qualifying questions, right, to your client before you take your client money and you submit the application. So for the business funding, this portion of this training today is specifically to draw down on, make sure before your client asks for an installment-based loan, you do not get sold on their credit score, that you ask qualifying questions about their credit report. Ask more qualifying questions. Have you ever got approved for an installment loan before? Have you ever took out a loan for any amount and paid it off in full, right? Because even though we're going to actually sign for your business, they're still going to pull your personal credit and do a soft pull. They say it's going to be a hard inquiry. It's going to be a soft inquiry. They're just going to take a little sneak peek. But when they take that little sneak peek, they need to make sure that the client has done this already. Or it doesn't matter what their business is, they're going to get denied, especially if the business hasn't built up enough history yet, guys. I just want to give you guys some free game. When the business actually been through this process with Dun & Bradstreet and Paydex, you know, if they go through our business funding process, the business credit process, and they get them first $50,000 worth of trade lines, those vendor trade lines, they serve a client for this purpose. $50,000 worth of vendor trade line, Quill, Uline, BJ's, all these different places, right? For that first tier, 1, 2, to build up their Paydex score and get their score active. So now it's being reported to Dun & Bradstreet, which again, go back to the algorithm, right? It's a technology. So when it's pulled from the technology through the lenders, they actually see that someone, doesn't matter who it is, just someone has approved this business for something before. Guys, that's all that's for. Oh, we get $50,000 for guaranteed funding. Yes, we do. But why is it important? You need to be able to tell your client that. Why is it important? Because you have to be approved as a company with some lenders initially for you to have an active Paydex score and for you to be in a position to build up your net 30s. What is net 30s? Means the company's going to charge you. You could charge them on their charge account, and they give you 30 days to pay it back. Net 30. That's what it means. The net 30 is 30 days to pay it back. You might have a net 60, a net 90, right? A net 30 is someone's charge. You charge on somebody's card. Let's say I get a gas card. I charge them gas. I got 30 days to pay that back to the lender. That's what that means. $50,000 funding guarantee is vendor credit to establish the Paydex and the Dun & Bradstreet, like we learned earlier, So that algorithm is active. So now when your client actually credit score get pulled, they got a score. Now, if your client actually got approved and they say their personal score is good to go, that's going to be our last point. And I'm going to wrap this up for you guys. I told you I got a lot to say. We're going to have to do 2.0 of this, right? So I'm going to end on this note here. Because I went 10 minutes over because we started 10 minutes late. So it's 12:05. I'm going to give you guys your whole hour, right? If the client personal file is actually strong, they went through the process. Now, when they PG for the business, guess what? The business has a business score now, right? They got a paydex score, and the person's personal score is in good standing, right? Now they can sign for it, even if the person is not as much, right? They don't have as many installment lines, but their business has $50,000 worth of approved credit, and they've been paying on it for a period of time. It makes sense for a lender to approve them now. Does that make sense? Because the two things are working together. You don't have a strong personal file, right? They got an 850 credit score, blah, 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 blah. But the business is naked. It's nothing on the business. The business has no clothes on it. There's nothing in here. It's a house that's a shell. It's no furniture on the inside of this business. This is a LLC or S Corp or articles or sole proprietorship company, but there's nothing on this business that has any level of credibility at all, other than it has an articles of organization with the Secretary of State. That's not enough for me as a lender to approve you for no money, right? That's not enough. Oh, I got X amount of revenue. Unless you got 2-year files taxes to be able to validate that, or they can do a 4506T or pull up your 941 to see what's going on with your tax documents. That statement means nothing unless you got the financials to approve, to validate it, some trade lines on that business to show a lender some credibility, then a personal score that signs for it. A good personal score with a naked business will get a person no money, unless that score is super high where they have already had installment loans. That client may get approved on the business on a lower tier, 10,000, 20,000, somewhere in that range, to start building it up. Does that make sense? We have to have realistic expectations to understand when we apply for these business loans, why should you apply? When should you not apply? So you'll know when to pivot with the client. But if your client got a decent file and they went through our business credit and they got some trade lines and it's looking pretty decent, they can work together. So even if they ain't at an 800, but they had a good 740, 750, and the business don't have 100,000 worth of trade lines, but they got 50, 60, these two could possibly get that client approved for $50,000 of a term loan, right? Or 40,000, but it's better than 10 or 20 because you're working on both sides. So guys, I really, really want to make sure that you guys understand how this stuff works, so that when we're working with our clients, we're working from a place of knowledge. Again, history to me is everything. I believe you got to study the original origin of things to really understand, appreciate where you are today. Then when you look at how we build in our business, our flagship product is to understand how to trade, make money out of the market. Once you make money out of the market, be able to put yourself in a position of power, leveraging how this algorithm from the 1800s has been created for us today. So once you get to an understanding of how it works, and even in accuracy of why it's disputed, you'll understand why Extreme has a fintech operation, because we want to help people understand how to use this to their benefit. When our clients pay $239 to get this product, $109 a month, they're getting these disputes that's sent to the Fair Credit Reporting Act on their behalf. Why is that important? Because these are companies, right? These are people. They are not robots. They ain't God. They don't got no magical wand. They make mistakes too. Our job is to work with our credit partners to help find out the inaccuracy that's on our client's report. Your client is paying $109 a month to be in a position to be able to get that help in that dispute that they are legally able to do based upon filing what's going on with their report. So as we're doing that, yes, you get the $85 compensation up front and you get the residual income, but most importantly, even over and beyond, your client is still in the position that they get built up and they get the empowerment that they need to be able to pivot. And then we can go to our next tiers of products. Guys, I just want to be able to give you some real live information to really understand where this stuff comes from and how we could be in a position of power working with our clients. So that is phase one of Coach Dynamite training on personal credit. I'm gonna swing back and I'll do part 2 tomorrow with you guys, man. But I had an amazing time doing this with you guys today, man. I'm super excited, man. Pumped up for our academy, and I'll be able to show you guys on our next training. I'm actually going to show you guys the smart credit video of how the smart credit works, the actual simulator that we have, right? to be able to help our clients. And I'm actually going to show you the smart credits, the monitor service, and then the debt simulator for the debt elimination. Many of you guys, some of you may not even seen it before. If you haven't signed up for the product yourself, which I always recommend you get it for yourself to be able to use it. But for the sake of training, I am going to share with you guys. I've downloaded. I'm going to share it with you on our next training on next Tuesday. So you might want to get your team on. Make sure your people understand it, because we need to sell a whole bunch of these products to be able to help our clients get in a position of power. Based on what you've seen today, man, if you ain't jacked and excited and really understand how it works, man, rewatch the playback, man, because every time I coach it, I get something from it myself. And I just want to come on here today and give you guys a bunch of value to really understand what great opportunity we have to be able to market something like this based on this being around for 200 plus years. You know what I mean? This system has been developed for us to be able to put our people in a position of power. So we need to market it. We need to help people with it. And I want you guys to be knowledgeable enough to really understand it. So I'm going to open it up real quick, man. If you guys got any questions, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Benjamin to be able to moderate, guys. But I'll take 2 or 3 questions before we get out of here. Dr. B, is there a doctor in the house?
Yes, sir. The doctor is here. The doctor is here. The doctor of money. The doctor of credit. Oh, man. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Wow, man. I'm so fired up. I'm here soaking in the training and just really grateful and thankful for the clarity and just understanding the history of the Dun & Bradstreet. Makes perfect sense. The FICO, just really powerful stuff. Fair Isaac Company is just very, very, very grateful, man. And thankful for the clarity, because now it gives us more information, more direction in terms of going out into the marketplace. So go ahead, Leah Anderson. Your hand is up. You're first to jump in.
Mr. Sloan, quick question.
Yes,
ma'am. How would a person get charge-offs on their report removed, or can they be removed?
Charge-offs can be removed. Again, what they're looking at, is inaccuracies. They always going to be looking at, was the balance correct? Was the address correct? A lot of times with, let's just say a charge-off, right? If a person had a car, most common scenario, person had a vehicle charged off, right? The debt was sold, right, to a collection company. Again, it's data. It ain't like they just took the files from the office and took it to the collection company. They transmitted the data, right? So let's just say Capital One was the company who actually, the original loan, when the person went into the dealership and bought the car, Capital One funded the deal, but they, sold it to XYZ collection company. XYZ collection company may not have all the data. So when a person is disputing it through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and they're looking at all these, typical inaccuracies, name, how much the debt was, address, spelling, all these type of things, they got 30 days to respond. If they don't respond back being invalidated, no matter if it was valid or not, they could have bought that block of debt. That doesn't mean all the information to validate the debt was actually in-house. So if it's not accurate, they have to delete it. Federal law.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Great question.
All right. Anyone else wants to jump in? Raise your hand or come off mute and go ahead and ask your question. Going once. Going twice. All right, Mr. Sloan, I think that was very clear. I received a lot of, okay, go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Yes. How about doctor bills? When they say you got, when you had surgeries and things and doctor bills that you never paid. And at the time you really didn't have the money. And do they always, hold them against you? Because I know where I live, they send them to a personal lawyer, and his business is actually wanting me to pay back doctor bills. So is there any way to, if you're not able to pay them?
Yes, ma'am. It's the same thing, because that's a third party, right? And so the thing of it is, guys, so yes, ma'am, Ms. Rebecca, same thing. Same example I said with Ms. Lee. The only difference of it is versus being a car is a doctor bill, right? They came through a hospital. The hospital still has to submit the information to the third party, attorney or law office or whatever who purchased the debt. Remember, with any company, when they sell debt, remember, they sold the debt, right? So they receive some level of compensation from that third party company who's buying it, who's now calling you to be able to try to collect the money for the debt that you owe the doctor's office, but you didn't owe the lawyer's office. You know what I'm saying? But the lawyer office bought the debt. Now they hounding you for the money. You follow me? And so a lot of times with companies like that, either the debt is wrote off, you're right, is wrote off as a loss because it's a business loss for a lot of these companies, and then they still can sell off the data. You know what I'm saying? So they may do one of the two, or they may do both. It depends on how that business handles that debt. You still have some leeway that still protects you under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, that if it's inaccuracy or the report is not right, and if they can't supply the documentation needed to validate that, then they have to take it off, regardless if it was, justifiably your debt or not. It's not when you're disputing, you're not being in a position to validate. You follow me? The debt itself, was it you? They have to validate it that it is you. It's not on you, it's on them. Because there's a lot of privacy stuff that protects you as a consumer, right? They have to validate it based on the business transaction that it is your debt. You don't have to prove anything other than disputing it based upon the findings. And if they can't submit the actual documentation to the credit bureaus at that point stating that this is Miss Rebecca's debt because of XYZ, this document, this was signed, this voice call, they have to send over that data to validate it. If they don't have it, it has to be disputed. It has to be deleted.
Can I say something else? The lawyer is the one I used to work for. I used to be his nanny for 7 years, so he know already what he paid me through the years. So he know already that I couldn't pay that debt. See how funny that is?
Yes, ma'am. So in situations like that, sometimes it's better to settle, right? So you could settle, right? If y'all talk about the debt, again, if the debt was sold off or whatever it was, you could talk with the collection company and just settle. Because sometimes, based on some things, that's a good way to go about it too, especially with certain, especially lenders. With lenders, if you don't really want to, I would say, break the lending relationship, right? Like, let's say a bank like Navy Federal. Navy Federal is one of the best credit unions in the whole country. If you had a charge-off debt with Navy Federal or any type of credit union like that who have very lenient policies on funding, you just settle. You don't try to dispute and you settle. Just settle because you want those banking relationships. So sometimes, in some instances, it's better to settle than it is to dispute. You follow me? So you really got to look at what's going to be the, the sweet, the better of both evils, which way to go. But these are the two things that have to be done. It's either going to be through the disputing process or through the settlement process, whichever one you feel like is going to fit your situation best. That's the way you go. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. And most times they'll settle for 50% or less. Like, you may owe $1,000, you can say, I can pay you $400. I can pay you $300, $350, right? I mean, a lot of times, because they wrote the debt off for little to nothing, as long as they get something from it, right? So whether you set it over payments or a lump sum, they'll typically settle to be able to collect something versus nothing.
Right.
And it shows good on your report because that derogatory goes off, and that's going to help your FICO score go back up. It shows settled. Then you can send that over to the credit bureaus and stuff like that. That debt has been settled and closed. And somebody put in here the HIPAA violation because of privacy. So certain things they can't transmit because they don't have it. It protects your privacy.
That doesn't matter. Just say if the bill was 10 or 15 years old, it doesn't matter. It'll be treated the same way.
It's like 7 years. So a lot of stuff rules. After a certain time, it can't affect your report anyway.
That's right. So if they suing you and it's been 10, 12 years, so what they doing? They're trying to still just get more money out of you. Yeah. In a way, they're trying to cheat you, right? And tell me that's what it's about.
Absolutely. Let's have a conversation offline. And we can go a little deeper. All right. We can go a little deeper. But it is of how long stuff can affect your credit report. It is rules. It ain't a lifetime forever thing.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sloan, I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's say that there's a debt collection and the collection agency is, like Miss Rebecca said, hounding you for the money. Is it true? Because I've heard pro and con. Is it true that if a collection agency calls you and you let them know that I didn't sign any documentation with you, I'm not obligated to pay you?
So what's the question?
Is that, can that occur or can that be done?
My rule of thumb with any recorded line is don't say nothing. You know what I'm saying? Because those recorded lines can be transmitted as evidence of still you admitting that it's yours. You see what I'm saying? And so the rule of thumb of it is don't say nothing.
Okay, good advice. Don't answer the call.
That's my rule. Don't say nothing. They say my audio went down. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, I hear you loud and clear.
Okay. All right, guys. All right, I want to make sure we have some Q&A time, but man, I'm out of here, man. Was that helpful for you guys? Y'all good? Y'all good to go?
Very good. Good to go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, absolutely. Thank you, Queen. And let's run this back next week. Same time, same station. I still got a half a report of notes to go through, and I got some videos to be able to show you guys, man. So let's make it happen, Captain. Let's make sure we get in here, guys. Let's help these clients. Again, our first phase of the 7 steps, right? To make sure you get in your academy, learn how to trade, take that money and do something productive with it, protect you and your family. Does that make sense?
Yes. How soon will the video be available? Because I'm at work, so I was looking and doing other stuff too.
Okay, I'll go in and get it downloaded. I'll send it over to Ms. Tan and we can go ahead and get it uploaded. Hopefully within the next a couple of hours. I'll give it a couple of hours.
Okay, thank you.
I'll try to get up to you by 3 o'clock and we'll get it over there to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, family. Love you guys, man. Let's be productive. Let's help some people, man. You guys have a great
Love you more and ain't nothing you can do about it.
Ain't nothing we can do about it. Come on, man. People out there.
Amazing training, co-founder Adrian Salone. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Queen. I appreciate you, Miss Jobina. I know that voice anywhere. I ain't even got. All right, family. Y'all have a great day. Talk to you later.
All right, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Good, brother. All right. All right. Bye-bye.